Tree diagrams. Draw a tree diagram that illustrates the different ways to flip a penny, nickel, dime, and quarter. How many ways can you get exactly one head? We're going to start this problem by drawing a tree diagram. And if we read the question, we're flipping a penny, nickel, dime, and quarter. So first I want to represent flipping a penny. And there's two sides to a coin, so I could either get a heads or a tails when I flip the penny. So I'll represent those two outcomes by placing an H for heads and a T for tails. This first column represents the outcomes of flipping a penny. Now I'm going to continue my tree by including the number of ways to flip a nickel. And again, a nickel has either a heads or a tails. So if I flipped the penny and I got a heads, then that means my next flip, when I flip the nickel, could also have two outcomes. I could have a heads on the nickel or a tails. Now, if I flipped that penny and I got a tails and then went on to flip my nickel, I would have two outcomes when flipping my nickel again. I could have a head or a tails. So this second column of outcomes represents me flipping the nickel. Now I'm going to move on to flipping the dime. And I'll continue that process. So if I flipped the penny and I got a heads, and then I flipped the nickel and I got a heads, then I could flip a dime and I would have two outcomes. I could either get a heads or a tail. So as you can see, I'm just adding another set of branches to the branches that I previously wrote down. So when I got a tails on my nickel, which is the second set of branches, I'm just going to branch out from there and add a heads or a tails to represent the outcomes of my dime. And the same with the next set. I'm going to just add a heads or a tail. And again, this represents me flipping the dime. So the third column of outcomes is the dime. Now lastly, I'm going to flip a quarter. And I'll just add branches again to each previous branch. And since there's only two outcomes for flipping a quarter, heads or tails, I'm just going to keep on writing heads and tails on my branch for flipping a quarter. Alright, so I just finished my fourth column, and this column represented the outcomes of flipping a quarter. Now I completed my tree diagram. Again, my first column represented the penny, and then after I flipped the penny, I have the second column representing the nickel. After I flipped the penny and the nickel, I have the third column representing the dime, and after I flipped all three coins, I then flipped a quarter, and this last column represents the different outcomes of flipping all four coins. Now I'm going to use this tree diagram to list all of the outcomes of flipping a penny, nickel, dime, and quarter. To list the outcomes, you just follow the branches. So you start at the branch representing the penny. If I had a head, and then I follow this branch, then I would get another head for the nickel. And then I could get another head for the dime and another head for the quarter. So this is my first outcome, getting all heads. Now I'll follow the branches again. So I start with the head for the penny, then I have a head for the nickel, a head for the dime, and now I have a tail for the quarter. So my second outcome is HHHT. Now I'll continue that process. I'm still looking at flipping a head on the penny, so I have an H, then I have an H for the nickel, and now I'm going to go down to the tail for the dime, and then an H for the quarter. My third outcome is HHTH. Now we'll continue this. So we have H for the penny, H for the nickel, T for the dime, and T for the quarter. And we can continue this by doing an H and now a T, since I already listed all my outcomes for doing an H on the nickel. So it'd be HT and then HH. So I'd have an outcome of HT, HH, and then I would do HT, HT, and then you would move on to HT, T, H, and continue that pattern until you list all of the outcomes. When we continue that process, we'll have all of these outcomes that are represented here. And from there, we want to use those outcomes to figure out how many ways we can get exactly one head. So we're just going to look at all of these outcomes and then highlight the ones where only one H appears. So here I highlighted the 4 outcomes that only have one H. We have H, T, 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 THTT, and TTHT, and then lastly TTT and H. So there are 4 ways to get exactly one head. So our answer is 4 ways.